The point is, Chris Russell, I think you like Michael Penix too much. We call that a transition in the business.
Hi.
If you were listening to Russell's show, as many of you were streaming on into us here, can you kind of recap where you're at with Penix? Because you got, I guess, a text from someone in the league that informed some of your opinions on some of these quarterbacks?
Well, not on Penix, on McCarthy. So Friday morning, got a text from a current NFL assistant coach who knows Dan Quinn very well. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
He had a strong hunch, feeling, whatever, that they're going McCarthy at 2.
Okay.
Now, that being said, I know they certainly have interest in McCarthy. I understand some of the reasons why they have interest in McCarthy. I would not personally do that, but I'm not Adam Peters. But like a lot of people, and I talked to somebody yesterday, a lot of people feel because J.J. McCarthy kind of reminds people of somebody that would be a great fit in the Shanahan system, that could be what they're looking for ideally, a better version of Brock Purdy, and somebody to kind of fit in that offense. And remember, Adam Peters obviously comes from San Francisco.
Yeah.
I know Cliff is Cliff, but
we can get to McCarthy in a second, because I like McCarthy more than anyone else.
So here's the deal. I said,
but what's your deal with Penix?
Right. If you trade out of number 2, which is still a possibility, I wouldn't call it a likely possibility, but it's still a possibility. If you trade out of number 2 and you drop somewhere into the 15, 17, 18, somewhere in that range, I like Michael Penix over Bo Nix, who would presumably be the 2 quarterbacks you would consider in that spot. And I think Penix is the best pure passer in this particular class.
Okay,
now,
so that's the quote that got me.
Yeah.
You said that on your show, right? And as you said it, I literally, in the graphic that's currently on YouTube, wrote down, Russell stated Penix, quote, best pure passer in the draft.
Yes.
That's how television works.
Right.
They get the quote and they put it right there in whatever context.
I like it.
What do you mean?
You are a media mogul. That's what you are. I am not.
What do you mean, though, by best pure passer? Because this is where I think people throw around terms that wind up, if you actually start to poke holes, being pretty leaky.
All right, so here was my argument. I thought, first of all, Caleb Williams, I think, is a side-to-side horizontal play extender, playmaker, good thrower, no doubt, very accurate, all that. But I don't know if I would just say pure passer. And when I say pure passer, I'm thinking, going way back here, like a Dan Marino type. I know Dan Marino, one of the best passers of all time.
Sure.
I'm just saying a guy that did not use mobility, a guy who did not have much mobility, but had deadly accuracy, could rifle, all sorts of things.
So would you call Patrick Mahomes, would you call Patrick Mahomes a pure passer?
I would not in my definition, because he's so athletic and so able to extend plays, break things down, throw from different angles, and so on.
So this is kind of my thing with this. And Caleb to Penix is a bit of a good one here to try to make this point. I think when people say pure passer, what they mean is he doesn't run. What they actually ignore is who is actually the better passer from the pocket. Because I would tell you that from the pocket, if you said, hey, you can't leave the pocket, I would trust Caleb Williams over Michael Penix, and it's not particularly close.
Why would you? All right, so help me out, because, again, you've watched more tape than I have. Why would you say that?
Because Caleb Williams did not often get the chance to be a quote-unquote pure passer, because his offensive line was, and I cannot stress this enough, terrible. The more you watch Williams, the more you realize that some of the playmaker hero stuff, occasionally does he pass up singles and doubles to try search for home runs? Sure. His defense was also god-awful, so he probably felt like he had to hit a lot of home runs. But he also did not have the opportunity to just sit back in the pocket and dice up defenses. Penix did. Penix has probably 4 NFL offensive linemen. He's got 2 that are going to be top 60 picks this year. Both tackles, both guards are probably Rosengarten, and then obviously Fontenot is going to be maybe even a top 15 pick, probably a top 15 pick at this point, depending on what those teams in that range like in terms of their flavor of offensive tackles. Meanwhile, and by the way, he's got 3 top 70 wide receivers that he's throwing to. Caleb, and so those guys are winning, getting open, all that kind of stuff. And they're playing in the same conference. The defense is not exactly great in that Pac-12 conference. May it rest in peace. Meanwhile, Caleb, on the rare occasion that he could just sit back and do it, did it at an extremely high level. Now, is what makes him a generational prospect the other stuff? Yes. But this goes back to the ceiling floor conversation, where a guy like Mahomes is him, because he can do the extra stuff. But if you just let him sit back there and beat you from the pocket, he is better than anyone else in the league at that. And so I think when you look at Penix, what you have is a guy who, despite running a 4.46 at his pro day, never actually uses any athleticism. He does not run. His decision-making from the pocket is questionable in terms of he throws the ball away too much. He's inaccurate. He's inconsistent. And so what I think what actually happens.
Penix, you're saying.
Yes. So I think what actually happens with the idea that, like, Penix is this pure passer. He can spin it. Like, he's got a great arm, without question, and his ability to layer the ball. Like, there's a lot of stuff to like about Michael Penix. I'm not saying he's a bad prospect. But what we're actually saying is we're finding a way to use a compliment to describe how he's limited and what makes him not as good as other players.
So, I mean, I understand a lot of what you just said. I guess, you know, and you're right. I never said, well, in my mind, Caleb Williams, you know, in terms of if he was just kind of a pure pocket passer, wouldn't be better than Michael Penix. I guess where I'm at with Penix, I think clearly he's not the mobile athlete that Drake May, Jaden Daniels, or Caleb Williams are, clearly.
Yeah.
But I think from what I've seen, anticipation, accuracy, ball location, timing, rhythm. Now, again, a lot of that, Rome Odunze is awesome. Yeah. That offense, great.
So is Jalen McMillan, and so is Jalen Polk.
Right, I got it. But you know, like if we're going to say, and I said this on the show, I said if we're going to punish Penix for that, then don't we have to also say, well, yeah, Jaden had a similar
so that gets to the level of competition,
which is different than USC. USC had weapons, but they didn't have those guys.
Right, but like Jaden is doing that with Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas and NFL linemen in the SEC against like really good defenses week in and week out, and he did it better.
Let me ask you this. Is the SEC defensively as good as it used to be? I don't think it is.
It's still better than everywhere else.
Sure, absolutely.
And, by the way, one of his better games is against Alabama, who is as NFL of a Alabama's defense has been described to me as more NFL than some NFL defenses.
Sure.
And I will say, well, yes, it is very hard to, like, on a couple weeks' notice, go against an NFL defense. When Michael Penix played Michigan, he had no idea what he was doing.
No, you're right.
And that was, by the way, after everyone fell in love with him that had just started watching college football for the first time in the semifinal, which was funny to watch.
And I worry about that, too, because Michigan is an aggressive downhill blitz, come at you from different angles type of, and you're right. I guess where I'm at is, all right, maybe I stretch a little bit when I say best pure passer. Again, depends on your definition.
Sure.
Maybe I'm slightly off on that. I'll yield to you, and you know your stuff. I guess where I'm at is I think he's the best value in the draft. And I also say if I'm going to draft a quarterback, not the top three guys, Caleb, obviously, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, and a lot of people, again, are building towards J.J. McCarthy. If you're not going to pick one of those guys and you're going to trade down and wind up, 15 or wherever, even if you wind up with 11 and 23, if Minnesota jumps up and gives you, the package you want, 11 might be too early for Penix.
Way too early
in my opinion. But there's nothing to say that you can't then trade down again and still wind up with Penix in the late teens or the early 20s. And that's where I go, okay, from a dissect a defense standpoint, if you give him time, and that isn't a big if you give him the ability to see, I think he can carve you up. Now, is he the same type of player as Jaden Daniels? No. But that's why Jaden Daniels is going to go top 2 or 3, and Michael Penix is going to go, if he's lucky, in the 15 to 30.
Well, sure. And I think Daniels is actually misunderstood quite a bit as well because he's so explosive as a runner, but he's not actually, like, he is both the ultimate and not a running quarterback at the same time. Like, when you think about guys that get out and extend plays, that's not Jaden Daniels. He does not run to throw. He runs to run. He's so good at it that I don't care. And I would be more than happy if the Commanders drafted him at 2. But I think that is kind of the common misconception where, like, the same thing is kind of happening now with Penix, of the group people that like him. They go, oh, he's a better athlete than you think. He's a 4.46 guy. And I'm like, okay, cool. But he never runs, so who cares?
Do you think he works his way around the pocket better than maybe we're giving him credit for?
Not really. Okay. He also doesn't have to that often in college because his offensive line is
maybe he will have to, in the NFL.
You're always going to have to.
Here's one thing, and it does jump out. Like you said, he does throw the ball away. It does keep him. Look, I think that's a smart thing. I mean, I know you can't do that every play in the NFL because eventually you got to stand in there and make a play. I got it. But to me, I want quarterbacks that know I can't take this sack. I did a study before I even met you back in 20. I guess it was 14.
We've known each other a long time at this point.
Okay,
Chris.
I guess it was 2014. I said, Robert Griffin's biggest problem is he cannot get rid of the football. He cannot process. He takes too many sacks, and sacks are as bad as turnovers in some ways, and people just killed me for that. And I'm not saying...
Probably because that, in some ways, is doing a lot of work there.
Okay, but sacks are really, really, really bad. They are
super
drive
harmful.
killers, right?
Yeah.
And most offenses can't overcome a 6, 7, 8-yard loss, whatever. Certainly no offense that we've seen here in Washington. So what I would say is I'd rather a quarterback, while he's still learning and trying to figure out everything on the NFL level, get rid of the football as opposed to taking a sack or getting lit up like a Christmas tree. So I don't look at that as a negative. And if you look, this big pressure to sack percentage thing is all high teens for Daniels, for Caleb,
Penix,
7.6%.
Yeah, Penix's number is awesome. The process to get there is not very good. And I think that's why you have to watch the tape. And, that becomes very difficult. And I brought it up with Daniels, and people have rightly pushed back and been like, you know what? He runs into some sacks because he's trying to make plays, but it's the right decision. It's the right process.
That's fair.
So I think
it's a pretty wide gap, though, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, but it also, again, if you just throw the ball away at the first sign of pressure all the time,
that's fair.
You can't really win with that either.
That's fair.
But I want to double click on McCarthy here. We're going to take a quick break, come back. Again, Kirsty Winter-Scott previewing the Elite Eight action tonight with us coming up at 4:30. But real quick next, I hear Chris talk about J.J. McCarthy in the way that a lot of people talk about J.J. McCarthy, and as someone who has wound up being put in the position of J.J. McCarthy defender, I'm just going to lean into that next. I'm just going to all out say, you want to know what? Y'all want to come after J.J. McCarthy? I'm going to let you come after, but I'm going to defend the guy.
I ain't coming after
J.J. McCarthy talk before we get to talking about Iowa LSU tonight next on The Hoffman Show.
This is The Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.